So it's a crazy camera, so it takes dopey pictures that really aren't there.
Yeah, it takes dopey pictures. Dopey pictures like things that haven't happened yet, but they do happen.
Hello, and welcome to the Twilight Pwn, the internet's third most popular Twilight Zone-based podcast. My name is John. I'm joined by my co-host, Fred.
Hello.
How you doing, Fred?
I'm good. Can we officially change the intro to, like, here we are, the third most popular Twilight Zone podcast on BAM, the internet.
Yeah. I suppose, sure.
Right,
we're probably due for a rebranding.
Yeah, exactly. I'm good. Did you have a good Halloween? What'd you go as?
It was a group costume with some friends. We were the cast of Bob's Burgers, except for I was Bob, my wife was Linda, the wife, and we had two of the three children. One of our group of friends, who would have been perfect as Louise, decided that she could not be bothered to complete the group costume and instead went as Nick Cave.
Boo.
So, yeah, big
it's an
time
official
booze.
Twilight Pwn burn on her.
How about yourself?
I didn't think about this before, but this nicely complements our personal branding because I went from a character from a 50s French film called Les Ballons Rouges. You know the red balloon, that movie?
Aware of it.
I went as Pascal.
In that I beat up a kid who really liked it.
Right. Understood. Okay, cool. So what are we doing this week?
This week we will be discussing a most unusual camera. This was a second season episode. It was the 46th of the production run. It aired originally on December 16th, 1960.
A hotel suite that in this instance serves as a den of crime. The aftermath of a rather minor event to be noted on a police blotter, an insurance claim, perhaps a 3-inch box on page 12 of the evening paper. Small addenda to be added to the list of the loot. A camera. A most unimposing addition to the flotsam and jetsam that it came with. Hardly worth mentioning, really, because cameras are cameras. Some expensive, some purchasable at 5 and dime stores. But this camera, this one's unusual. Because in just a moment, we'll watch it inject itself into the destinies of 3 people. It happens to be a fact that the pictures that it takes can only be developed in the Twilight Zone.
In 1 hour or less, or your money back. So we like to write our own Serling-style intros. I feel like I went second with my horse racing one. Okay. I'm just trying to remind people that was a good one for this one. So,
you know, I did say maybe we should just ease off him for a little while. I feel maybe I took that to heart because mine's pretty weak. This.
All right. Well, I'll go first, and we'll try and edit something together. All right. Here we go. Submitted for your approval the following phenomenon: a common square device that gives its users a picture. It is, of course, the window. A source of calm and comfort to most Americans, providing us with the reassuring reminder that the outside continues to exist. However, should one window, a most unusual window, choose to drastically shorten the physical distance between window viewer and window view, well, that is precisely where we find ourselves in tonight's tale of terror. Also, there's a camera, the Twilight Zone.
Similar. Okay. I think we're on a similar wavelength.
All right.
An old adage instructs that a picture is worth 1,000 words. But tonight we consider not how much a picture is worth, but how much it costs. For 3 bumbling baddies with brains bent on base-born behavior and bamboozled bets, this most unusual camera will prove to be a most unusual camera. Wait, what the hell? God, I need a break. The Twilight Zone.
I was like, is that John giving up or Serling giving up? Because both are equally plausible.
Well, it was really me, but then I felt like, I bet he felt like that from time to time.
Yeah, pretty much. The construction of a most unusual is pretty much like...
It's basically like Serling's equivalent of me saying like, or you saying That's his thing.
Yeah. Don't point out our weaknesses, John. Look, the Twilight Zone podcast wars are heating up. We can't afford this kind of infighting. So it's a second season episode, meaning it's on Netflix. You can check it out there. Also on Hulu for free, and of course buy the DVDs and Blu-rays and watch it one way or the other before we spoil it, which is what we're about to do. So we open with yet another disappointing newspaper article that has nothing to do with a petition against a tax or a building code.
I feel like they're just toying with us at this point.
It really makes you understand, like, the contemporary distaste for the news media. It's like, they won't tell us about the petitions against tax. Why should we trust them? But the article is about a theft at some sort of antique or junk shop, and we see the thieves who carried out the heist, a man and a woman, a married couple. Or are they married? I guess they're married, right?
Well, they certainly bicker as if they were.
Fair enough.
In Serling's world, married couples tend not to get along too well.
Yeah.
So.
And later we find out they sleep in separate beds, so I think that's pretty much a lock. They are married.
Right.
They're discussing this heist that they've pulled off and lamenting how the stuff they stole is no good. Quick hot or not, the guy, Dr. Phil, what do you think?
Dr. Phil, interesting. I
He's
definitely
not the first Dr. Phil hot or not, I want to point out. But,
yeah, I'm looking at the pictures and it's like a little bit, but...
It's also possible that, like, any early 60s bald middle-aged white man sort of looks like Dr. Phil, so I don't know.
Right, he kind of... What's the name of the guy who plays Cave Johnson in the Portal 2 games? Or he's like the insurance guy?
I don't know, John. I went as a character from a 50s French film for Halloween. I don't know who played Cave Johnson.
J.K. Simmons. He was in.
Okay.
He was in Juno.
Okay, I know.
He looks a little like J.K. Simmons, but I wouldn't say that's a solid ring either.
Okay, all right. We'll get half credit on that one. Amid all the other sort of let down treasures they stole, they also got a lame ass antique camera. And we see that, and we cut away to Serling's intro, which is kind of cool. He's like up against a mirror, and you can see the married couple in the mirror.
I guess what was a little strange was they kept the characters in the scene, but the characters appeared to be frozen as far as I could tell.
I think they were not moving. They were both like reading. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It wasn't like the woman froze like mid-juggle or something.
Right, it wasn't
that.
like the end of Police Squad or something where they're trying.
The Twilight Zone. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It was. I will say it was one of the clunkier whip pans we've ever had because I think they tried to diagonally whip pan and it just. I don't know. Maybe the camera's just not really designed to handle that at that time.
Yeah, you could sort of sense the tripod needed a good grease, a good dollop of grease. So after the botched whip pan, we get back from commercial, and the man in the couple, Chester, is talking about the camera. And he says that 20 years ago, you could pick up a camera like that for 39 cents, which brings us to our new jingle, Hit It!
Inflation.
Calculation.
I just made a jingle.
Finally putting Robbie to work.
Yeah, exactly. Got him in the studio with my friend Gretchen, and magic happened. I just made that jingle because I know you hate when I talk about this stuff on the podcast. But if we have a jingle, it's going to get talked about. I just thought it was funny. He says 20 years ago you could buy a camera like this for 39 cents, which would be in 1940. Which today is the equivalent of $6, which seems unrealistic.
But I think the more important calculation is how much would the 29 cents or 39 cents be in $1960?
Why? Because he's saying 20 years ago.
Yeah, he's saying 20 years ago this would have cost you X, so how much would it have cost
at the
time
what you're
he's saying it?
Yeah, that's a good
Fred,
question.
This is not jingle worthy.
But it is leading to nice conflict, which our listeners love. Okay. So they're messing around with this camera, and Dr. Phil takes a picture of his wife by the window. And after a smidge of charming Serling-esque marital bickering, the camera pops out sort of a Kodak style picture of her.
Yeah, it kind of made me in this realm that we sometimes get to, curious, but not curious enough to Google it. I didn't know that there were like Polaroid equivalent cameras before, the 70s or 80s, whenever Polaroid, as we think of it, came about. But
maybe I need to make a jingle for us Googling it on air.
I guess in the 40s. This says the first commercial instant camera was in 1948.
Yeah, the land camera. Okay.
I believe it was called the land camera. Of course, the earliest instant camera consisted of a camera in portable darkroom in a single compartment.
Of course.
That was Samuel Schlafrock in 1923.
Right, yeah.
If I remember.
Yeah,
I don't know.
A little hazy on the details. So this kind of camera, the fact that it's producing like Polaroid-style image
is not
the
that
miraculous
unusual.
thing. Yeah.
Right, that's not most unusual.
Right, that's mildly unusual.
Right.
But what is most unusual is that in the photo she's wearing a fur coat, and in real life she wasn't wearing a fur coat. So
I get it. Camera's strictly for laughs. Strictly for laughs. It's a gag camera.
What do you mean?
Look. They've already got the pictures developed inside. The negatives have got pictures on them. All this does is take the faces.
What?
You know, like at a carnival. When you stand back at that crazy cardboard thing. You know, fat lady, guy driving a car, sailor, you know.
Piece of candy corn, old shoelace,
Yeah, just saying random nonsense. I do like that the hilarious gag of the camera is that it puts a fur coat on someone who doesn't have one. That's like about the level of humor as the average Twilight Pwn joke.
Aren't there like apps like that you can take a picture and it'll... I know you can do the change faces altogether, but I imagine they have something that's vaguely equivalent.
A most unusual Instagram filter.
Right,
Yeah, I don't know.
Exactly. Oh, God.
They erroneously write off this as some kind of gag camera, and then they're going through the rest of the hall, and they open up...
We get a big heap and helping of Serling dialogue right here as they look through the rest of the loot.
Now we might as well clear up the rest of this junk. Let's get at that chest. Key come with us?
No, you'll have to open it in your own inimitable style.
Anybody ever tell you got a nasty disposition?
If I have a nasty disposition, it's because I'm married to a nickel and dime heister who can't tell a real diamond from a baseball.
Look, baby doll. Well, this suite is $28 a day, delivered and paid for by Mrs. Diedrich's son, Chester, on profits collected over a pot full of years when you weren't even in the picture.
Just want to break that down linguistically.
Sure.
So the line when she said, in your own inimitable style, Serling used that in Mr. Denton on Doomsday when he was like, Denton, your own inimitable style. And then the second half of that, Serling later reused in Uncle Simon when she's like, if I'm a nag, it's because my gardener was. You remember that?
Except for that it was played a very, very different way.
Well,
it was a very stoic read. In that.
Sure. But it is funny how you just get these weird little verbal tics of Serling and you just kind of, you see them. You kind of feel like the sense that he just like had these little muscles. Like he's like, if you can just get his two characters arguing, he's like, okay, then I just kind of know what to do, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So they open up the chest and there's a fur coat in it, and the lady thief, puts it on and goes over to the window and poses and very deliberately tries not to notice the coincidence of that. So in the next scene, it's night, and they're sleeping in their separate beds. I just love the weird convention of like decency in old movies and TV, because it leads to weird little things. Like the woman is saying, "Sweetie, come back to bed," because he's up. But does she really mean like, "Come back to your bed, which is near mine"? You know, it's just a funny thing. But the guy, Dr. Phil, is staying up late trying to figure out what's up with this weirdo camera. And the woman's trying to get him to go to bed, and she sort of like takes a picture of the door just to show him it's a stupid old camera. And they look at the picture, and they see the woman's brother, Woodward, developed, who apparently is no way he could be there because he's in jail. And then, lo and behold, who should show up a minute later but Woodward.
What? And we get an introduction to Woodward, who I found a very charming character.
Paula, hi, Chet. I didn't want to wake you, so I jimmied the door open. I broke out. Me and another guy hitting a laundry truck. It's nice, huh? I didn't think you'd mind if I stayed with you for a few days. Well, you don't, do you? I was thinking if I was around, you two wouldn't fight so much. You still all-time fighting? What's this, Chet? You like that? There I am, standing by this very door, wearing the clothes I got on. How about that? I tell you, science is wonderful. To be able to take a picture of it. Wait a minute. Like, how come?
The most shocking cut leads into commercial. Like, How come?
Yeah. I have to say, it's rare that you can hear a character's accent fall apart over the course of one clip. Normally, it's like across the length of the entire episode. But it's just a roller coaster up and down through that whole thing.
I was going to say, listening to just the audio without the visual, like, it feels like a cartoon character just walked in on the thing. Like, doesn't he sound like an animated dog or something?
Yeah, he kind of does, just a bit. I'm here to stay with you. It's also funny, too, because it's a character from The Hitchhiker. It's the guy who was the Navy dude. And I just every time he walks in, I think, like, my feet feel like a couple of hot bricks. Like, it's hard for me to disassociate that.
Well, it's nice to see him stretch, you know. We've seen him play both sleazy and dumb, so he can really run the gamut.
Yeah, completely. It's a real Philip Seymour Hoffman of his day.
I do feel like he and Wilfred Jr. from The Mask would probably get along pretty well.
Oh, you know, it's funny. Like, someone on Twitter, Schnackenberg, asked us just an hour before we started with this who we thought was dumber. I think it's this guy, Woodward, because Wilfred Jr. just kind of...
But they're different.
Right.
They're different dumb. I think see him kind of like he's
a lout.
Mean bully lout.
He's an oaf.
And I see Woodward as kind of like, you know, kind of like the goof. Yeah, the goof. Like, but I think they could pal around all right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when they're both drinking, they'd have a great time, you know.
Well, he did say he broke out of jail with a friend of his, so...
presumably Wilfred Jr.
Yeah, broke out of jail with this guy's got a really messed up pig face.
We'll work this out in our fanfic.
Okay, yeah. Stay tuned to the Tumblr. So when we get back from commercial, they're having a brainstorming session about what to do with the camera. It really had the feel of like they got a whiteboard, all this stuff written on it, and they're trying to talk about like selling it or whatever. And Dr. Phil gets a flight of fancy and considers donating it to humanity or giving it to NASA or the Rand Corporation or something.
Right. The Human Fund.
Right, exactly. But in the middle of this monologue, Woodward turns on a horse race, and they get a wise idea to use the camera to bet on horses. And they explain it in a very drawn-out way, even though it's very obvious right off the bat what they're going to do. So... in the next scene, we're at the stock footage raceway, and they have a plan to take pictures of the winner's board before the race, bet on, you know, the biggest odds they can get, and obviously cash in like whoa. They do their little trick, and Tidy 2 is set to win. It works, and then we get a nice little montage of horse racing stock footage.
And we should say this is our second episode in a row that deals with the ponies.
That's true.
And I don't mean the fans. I mean the real horses. And
oh, right.
You would think that there's some kind of planning or forethought that goes into this, but
nope.
I don't think so. Nope.
Indeed, there isn't. But like, you could easily get into, you know, millions and millions of dollars after just like 5 races. I mean, if you're multiplying your money by 40, you know what I mean? So right. they clearly make off with a ton of cash. And indeed, in the next scene, we see them back in the hotel counting up their monies, and a French waiter comes to get their stuff. So I guess this apartment building has room service or something? I didn't really get what he was. I
thought they lived in... Well, I guess I just kind of assumed it was kind of like a hotel-ish thing. Like but then he says, like... What's his comment about?
Whatever. This apartment building has a French waitstaff and champagne. And the French waiter picks up the camera and kind of is noticing it for some reason. And he translates this foreign writing on the camera. It's actually, well, not foreign, it's French. And it says...
foreign?
Yeah, exactly. This frog, Jingo. And it says, like... 10 à la propriétaire, which means 10 to each owner, meaning that the les trois thieves may not have many pictures left.
A spirited debate about how best to proceed with only 2 photos remaining.
I bet we can take as many pictures as we want.
But we don't know. We can't take any chances.
Yeah, that's right. She's right. You know what I think? I think we ought to sell it.
Oh, who's rattling your cage, ape? Doesn't even belong to you. You're here on charity. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going out to the track tomorrow and bet 2 more races.
Are you both crazy? What we gotta do is hang on to it, save it for a rainy day.
No, we don't. We gotta sell it.
We're not
selling anything.
So in the midst of that Socratic debate,
Algonquin
yes,
round table.
yes, yeah, about what to do with the last 2 pictures, half of their remaining stash of pictures gets used up.
Which in today's pictures would be
right,
8 pictures.
Right. But it gets used up with like a selfie of the lady screaming.
I was wondering if we were going to get through this episode without an S-bomb.
Yeah, that wasn't the best, but
Pretty
I just figured I had to pull it out. We already did Instagram, so...
Yeah.
The kids love us.
All the
yeah. So the picture shows the lady, Mrs. Dr. Phil, screaming... which makes Dr. Phil suspicious of Woodward. He really quickly pulls a knife and begins what I would say is the least convincing knife fighting stance I've ever seen. He's really just kind of dancing around like an idiot. They tussle and just both fly out the window. Like, if the Twilight Zone has taught us one thing, it's that it's damn easy to fall out of a window.
Well, they never say how tall that building is, so we could speculate that it's basically like the Nightmare at 20,000 feet. There might be quite a significant vacuum happening right around that window.
That's true, yeah. It may be in the upper atmosphere, and it's just like sucking them out. So after that, Mrs. Dr. Phil really quickly cycles rapid fire through the 6 stages of grief.
Which was, again, it was another moment that was played for laughs, though the tone has gotten progressively weirder as the 2 guys have just flown out the window.
I know, Serling, like, remember in Escape Clause when the guy's wife falls down to her death, and that's sort of played as a riff? Maybe Serling just saw somebody fall off a building and was like, gotta use that.
Yeah. Honey, this is great.
Get a look.
Honey?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The Twilight Zone, honey. So she starts packing up the money to run out. And then, kind of inexplicably, she runs over to the window, and she's like, for posterity, boys. And she takes a picture of their dead bodies, which sounds really macabre now that I'm saying that out loud. And at this point, Pierre comes up to steal the money. I'm not sure if his name is Pierre or they were just denigrating him by calling him Pierre, but the frog hops back up to the room to steal her money. And in the process of robbing her blind, he takes a quick look at the photo and says, "Oh, it shows the 3 bodies," which startles her because obviously there's only supposed to be 2 bodies. And she dives out the window, too, in shock.
Startles her quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, they do at least go to the trouble of showing us that there's, like, some little wire or something that would explain why.
Yeah, because when she's worried that she's going to fall out a window, she runs at the window and trips.
She kind of, like, gets down on the blocks and, like, dashes at the window. You know what I mean? And she just flies out the window like Superman jumping out style. So Pierre takes a look at the photo and he's like, 3 bodies, haha. And then he realizes he apparently missed a body. And then the camera
doesn't, the director's like, I can't even pretend to block this anymore.
And I guess maybe the implication is because he's French and has a delicate constitution, he faints out the window?
Sure. That's one interpretation.
I mean, he's probably been drinking red wine all day, so and his head is cloudy from all the cigarettes.
And he saw like a black cat with a stripe of paint on its back and thought it was a female skunk.
Yes,
so
there's many plausible explanations why a French person would go flying out the window. But the window has claimed its 4th victim. And it's time for Serling to put a bow on this turkey.
Object known as a camera. Vintage uncertain, origin unknown. But for the greedy, the avaricious, the fleet of foot, who can run a 4-minute mile so long as they're chasing a fast buck. It makes believe that it's in a lie. But it isn't at all. It's a beckoning come-on for a quick walk around the block in the Twilight Zone.
This episode really should have been called A Most Dangerous Window.
Right.
We had a
I think this was just a PSA for window
safety. Yeah. We had a listener, Dave Cowlow, somebody that we called out last week in a bizarre stalking segment. And he said, I believe this episode holds the distinction for most characters to fall to their deaths out of a window. 4. And if you think about it, there have been a lot of episodes in which someone jumps out a window. But this one takes the cake.
Yeah, it's definitely up there in the annals of TV history for characters that jump out of a window.
Yeah, kind of made me wonder, if they just kept the camera rolling and the police come up to investigate the death and they just go flying out the window. And Rod Serling steps into the room. He's like, yes, it was quite just flying out.
That would have been, his closing should have been as him falling.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so deep thoughts?
My biggest kind of thought is tone overall, because it's one of these episodes, I feel like it's pretty clearly played for kind of, not lighthearted comedy, but they're supposed to, I think it's kind of like a little bit of an edgy comedy piece.
Yeah.
But it just goes so far off the rails in the last 3 minutes, it's hard how to take it. Is it just going for avant-garde absurdist comedy at the very end? Or?
Yeah, I think Serling just had a weird concept of what dark humor was supposed to be, Mm-hmm. It's all these timpani gags, and then just suddenly he just starts mowing characters down one by one.
Right. And when you think of a show that's so associated with ironic comeuppance, it's just so strange when it's we just start chucking characters out of windows. It's how does this really fit into the overall scheme of what's gone before?
Well, you missed the extended cut where they all talked about their fear of heights or their arrogance about heights. Yes. I don't know.
Yes.
I'll never fall out of this window. Back to the camera. There's a lot of Twilight Zone episodes about characters who come across a miraculous device, like What's in the Box we've already seen. Nick of Time is one that was actually really aired maybe 1 or 2 episodes before this one. There's a few more. Serling took an idea and would spin it a couple different ways, and this time it's kind of played for not exactly outright comedy, but a lighthearted take. It's just weird that it's lighthearted and it ends with 4 rapid succession deaths. You know what I mean?
I don't know what you would compare it to. It's 20 minutes of take the money and run, and then the last 5 minutes are a simple plan or something.
It's a weird juxtaposition. Yeah. And the funny thing is that I don't think it's outright hilarious, but it is charming enough. It's funny in that way that the Twilight Zone can be. One thought I had was imagining this camera in real life and how boring the average encounter with this camera would be. Just it would be, you'd take a picture of a nice view and it would print out the nice view 5 minutes later.
Yeah, definitely. There'd be a lot of ways you could use the camera and then not actually be aware of its
exactly.
power.
Just be this crappy camera's broken,
Yeah, it's another kind of yarnish. I mean, can you tease out any bigger implications other than
it's funny because I was
don't steal or go near windows?
Yeah, exactly. I was looking at IMDb and a lot of people were like, "Oh, enjoyable romp mixed with a morality tale," and I'm like, is it really a morality tale?
Well, I think that's the part of the fact that falling out windows doesn't connect well with anything that's happened. So is it just to say bad person gets punished doesn't I mean, it's kind of a morality tale, but I don't know. It's not really even a tale. It's just an equation.
Exactly. It's kind of a morality joke.
Right.
It's a morality limerick is what it is.
What we doing next? Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Yeah. Scott, Zachary, Martin Grams Jr., Zachary and Grams and IMDb.
In my trivia book, Martin Grams Jr.'s The Twilight Zone, Unlocking the Door to a Television Classic. There's a lot of stuff. The most interesting little bit I found was another CBS censoring of something. Apparently they requested the removal of the word frog, which was used to describe the waiter character frequently, and I noticed that we have used it a lot in the course of the episode. So we are less progressive than a 1960s television show.
Sorry.
And apparently, this is not in the Graham's book, but Goosebumps had a TV show, the popular young adults or middle grade novel series. And there was an episode called Say Cheese and Die that was basically this episode, but with kids. And you can find clips.
And more competently.
Yeah, probably. Probably no arbitrary jumping out of windows. And it stars a young Ryan Gosling. So there you go.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and this is one little bit of extra layer, I guess, of nuance and meaning. The main characters, as we said, were named the Dietrichs, which if you look at its spelling, it's spelled died rich. So, hilarious.
Ring-a-ding.
Okay. All right, so do you have any other trivia?
That's it.
So Fred Clark played Chester. According to IMDb, quote, he pretty much cornered the market during the 50s and 60s as the dour, ill-tempered guy you love to hate.
Another...
Yeah, I can just see him like signing his 8x10s with that in quotes. Just looking through his profile or his filmography, he was also in a movie called Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini Machine.
Right. A classic.
And he was in a film called Hemingway's Adventures of a Young Man, which I've never heard of, but I thought sounded like if Hemingway tried to write a children's book.
Yeah. John was a good boy. A good, strong, clean boy.
Right.
He went into the woods.
It becomes vague. Yeah. It's like, it actually does just kind of sound like a children's book. Yeah. John had a dog. The dog's name was Spot. Yeah. Spot was a good dog.
Yeah, exactly. You should read Old Man in the Sea to your child. See what happens.
All right. Jean Carlson played Paula. She was known for her famous catchphrase, "Hello, doll."
Nice. That is a good catchphrase. Almost as good as ring-a-ding.
Right. In her words, she was mainly typecast as the, quote, second woman or second tomato.
I would say she was primary tomato.
In this episode, yes, she got to stretch her seeds. Adam Williams played Woodward. He, like we said, was the sailor and the hitchhiker.
Yeah.
Marcel Hilaire was the waiter. He was also in the new exhibit. Written by Rod Serling, directed by John Rich, who also did a kind of stopwatch. Rich later went on to work on All in the Family. He was listed as an executive producer for MacGyver, which I think means he might have been like one of the creative forces behind MacGyver. Yeah. Kind of fascinating to think about.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the...
Inevitable.
So we like to find connections between the Twilight Zone and Mystery Science Theater 3000. We have one that we've already covered, which is the guy who played Woodward was in The Space Children, but I'm guessing you have another one.
I do. So in addition to that, Franklin Farnham was uncredited as Man at Racetrack. Franklin is up there. Franklin is up there. I forget if someone's beat him, but I believe he had over 500 credits that I had to scroll through.
Oh, God.
But it was all worth it because he appeared uncredited as a party guest in the 8th season Mystery Science Theater episode, The She Creature.
Oh.
And he was also uncredited as, I don't remember, maybe a person at a bar or something in the 2nd season episode, Invasion USA.
That's amazing.
So,
I'm going to watch The She Creature tonight and see if I can find him.
So that wraps it up for the B's and T's. IMDb gives this episode a 7.6. Fred, what do you think?
It's kind of a 5 in that it's like just kind of a pretty Twilight Zone episode that doesn't have a huge amount to recommend it. But I think it's just, I don't know, I just enjoy it. I mean, like, it's not good when people start flying out the window, but I certainly enjoyed watching it.
Right.
I don't know, like 6 minus 5, something like that. What do you think?
Yeah, I was very close. I think 5 is a good place to kind of set it, and then I think it's just how you react to the moment when all the people start flying out the window. Exactly. I could see how it could take some people to the land of 5 minus or 4 because it's just so wrong and absurd. But if you're kind of having fun with it, if you're willing to go along the ride out the window, then I think it's like a 5+.
Yeah, I think if Serling himself had fallen out the window, that would have bumped it up to like an 8 or 9. But that really would have pushed it to the avant-garde. But okay, I think 5+ is about right.
Cool. All right.
Thank you to who requested this.
Thank you to Matthew on Twitter for the request.
Thanks, Matthew.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Next week, we will be discussing The Encounter, which we've had multiple listeners request, including Kristaps, Chris, and Vile Jelly. So
if you want to request an episode, get in touch with us. There's lots of ways to do it. John, what are they?
Well, you could send us an email at twilightpwn@gmail.com. You could get in touch with us on Twitter at twilightpwn. You could check out our website, twilightpwn.tumblr.com, where we put up pictures and things we find or create related to the episodes we talk about. You could also listen to us on Stitcher or TuneIn Radio, or you could subscribe to us in iTunes. And if you're over there, if you'd leave us a review, we would really appreciate it. On that note, thank you very much to the Mighty Zero for writing us a really nice review. And we agree that when we first started doing the podcast, we were deeply embarrassed with the name as well. And it turned us off from doing it, but we kind of gotten over that.
It's funny. I'm still embarrassed about the name. I just don't think about it. Like, I just gotta.
Yeah, that's the best way to handle the situation.
I've internalized it. I just don't think about it. But when I do think about it, I still am embarrassed. So
yeah,
it's nice to be reminded every now and then. So thank you.
And also one other thank you to a listener. Sent us an email by the name of Brian to an article about kind of the group of Twilight Zone, well, just sci-fi and fantasy writers in general that were active in the early 60s, kind of led by Charles Beaumont.
Oh, yeah.
It was a really good read. We'll put it up on the Tumblr. One thing I found kind of interesting, and this kind of ties into the whole Serling and comedy thing, is he does mention that Serling was always very nice to them. Everyone really liked and respected him a ton, but he didn't quite fit into the group all that well, in part because when he would get around the group, he kind of felt a need to tell like crude off-color jokes to try and kind of entertain people, and that was just really not their sense of humor.
That's really weird.
So, yeah.
It's really weird to imagine.
I can very much picture that.
Submitted for your approval, gentlemen. I guess the question I could ask is, have you ever... We're kind of from a weird generation because we're not so far out of the realm of taking selfies, but we're not really in it either. Have you ever taken a selfie and knowingly not knowingly, have you ever posted it to Facebook or anything?
I believe I was on the selfie train, in the early 2000s. There was,
really?
There was some social media sites that,
You're talking about like Makeout Club or something?
Yeah, pretty much. There's a lot of pictures up there.
Okay, got it. If you don't know what Makeout Club is, you're a lucky person. Cool. All right, well, I'll talk to you next week, John.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
The eternal debate about to sell it, to hold it, to bet with it. Where do you fall?
Well, you got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them. And what's the rest of that song?
You got to know when to walk away, Fred, and when to run.
Cool.
All right.
Okay. All right. Can you hold on? Because I got to do something.